Welcome into today's episode. My name is Mamoun Bennani, and today we're interviewing John Sutherland, the founder of Adaptive Bodywork. He's a bodyworker here in Montreal who has created his own modality when it comes to working with the body. And it's something that's been really interesting to me and something that I have received that is really different from any other type of massage therapy. The one thing that is different is the work with the body in the movement. It's a really active work, and it's something that we're going to be discussing a little bit more in this podcast, explaining the modality, talking about structural integration, and many other aspects of holistic health. Me and John have a lot of similarities and things that are maybe new to me, but it was a really interesting conversation. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this talk that I had with him, and see you on the inside. All right, John, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
Good morning, a beautiful sunny day.
Yeah, amazing. First day feels like summer, so that's great. Really
I went out in the backyard, everything's in blossom, so it's changing.
Yeah, very cool. So this is really exciting. John is my neighbor. We just found his studio in front of our place, and it happens to be in really working in things that we believe in, Maud and I, my wife and I. So we thought we would come and say hi. Ended up working with him, getting some of his treatments. And before that, I'll just give a brief introduction. So John Sutherland, he's a structural integration practitioner, massage therapist, and many other working with health with other modalities. So he's gonna tell us a little bit more about that. So my first question is, what brought you to this? Like, why health? Why body work? So what happened in your life that brought you to this place?
Okay, well that could be a long story.
Yeah.
But I mean, since I was a kid, I was involved in sports, and my parents were very proactive as getting us involved in gymnastics and taekwondo and skiing. Mm-hmm. Like my grandfather made my first skis when I was 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And so I was into being physical and doing whatever I could do at a young age. But ultimately, you move along, you do your sports, whatever. And I got into the field of graphic design. Mm-hmm. So I was working in graphic design for some 25 years. And in 25 years, it evolved amazingly. Like, it was originally very manual, rapidographs, rubber cement, ruling tables, and it went to a very digital environment. Mm-hmm. So what was a hands-on trade became a little bit of a digital assembly line.
Okay.
And I started to feel that I was losing the contact, I was losing communication. And ironically, we call this the industry of communication.
Exactly, yeah.
Which was becoming, a cubicle environment with zero communication, or you're communicating via a salesperson who was ultimately a filter of information, mm-hmm. which was a bit discouraging. So 25 years down the road, I was feeling that this was not fulfilling my needs. As a former athlete, as a current athlete, it just was not nurturing. And I remember someone gave me an opportunity. They wanted me to promote and run a fitness competition, a pretty big fitness competition. And it was like a 6-month project. And I said, yeah, I could do that. And it was kind of like this, I was going to leap in a direction that I knew there would be no coming back. So I liked the idea that it involved a change, but it was still a bit scary because what was that change going to be?
Yeah.
So I did that. The competition went super well. And
what type of competition is it?
It was a fitness competition. So there was it was a little bit bodybuilding, figure, but people on stage, and they were. Okay. It was a pretty big level competition.
Okay.
So it was promoting it. It was everything involved, orchestrating all the athletes, getting the sponsors, everything that was involved. But ultimately, it finished super well. Mm-hmm. And I was living at the time in the Rosemont area because I was working with a gym called La Batcave.
Okay.
And we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
But I actually had someone who's a bit of a fitness guru who was staying at my place, a guy from Australia named Kit Lachlan.
Okay.
And I was kind of talking at the top just out loud, and I said, I wonder what aspect of graphic design I'm going to go into next. Mm-hmm. And he looked at me and his Aussie accent. He says, John, I think the world has enough graphic designers. What the world needs is some good, therapists. And I said, something just resonated with me.
Yeah.
I said, what does that involve exactly? How do I do that?
Yeah.
And he suggested a good route would be via a massage school. Learn the physiology, the anatomy, get your hands in, become certified so you can touch people and work with people.
Right.
And it was crazy enough and novel enough that I said, that weekend I enrolled in a introduction at a place in Montreal called Kinney Concept. I did that. I think the following week I enrolled in a full certification course for Swedish massage.
Okay.
And that's how I started getting my hands into the work.
Okay.
And
now you're about 45 years old, 40 years old. Like that's kind of.
At that time, something like that. Okay. 42-ish, 40, something like that. So I was already an older student, and I was, I had a certain amount of wisdom I was bringing in.
Yeah.
And I found the whole scenario quite juvenile.
Yeah.
And I had a problem with, I was pushing the teachers, well, show me how, explain to me why. And they were always saying, we'll get back to you. Yeah. I was the demanding, athlete, and they weren't getting back to me. And Swedish massage, we're applying, we're doing essentially I don't want to put down Swedish massage because it's great when you need that type of approach.
Yeah.
But it felt to me like a glorified car wash, pétrissage, effleurage, and moving over the surface.
Yeah.
It's a big song and dance, and the clients enjoy it. They feel good afterwards.
Yeah.
But I wasn't making a change. I wasn't imparting any structural modification.
Right.
In one sense, that's good because they'll always be coming back for the same thing, and you can repeat it over and over again. But in my entourage, which was mostly athletes who are looking for a high level of performance, they don't care about feeling good. They want to perform well. And if I can't articulate how this modality or this technique is going to change them, improve them, modify them on a performance level, they're not really interested. So this is what my problem as I was going through this course, and I could see that it wasn't answering these principal questions. So I was searching and I was looking and finding something else. The school itself had multiple levels of fascia and various things that I studied, and they still were a little bit too subtle, and they weren't answering what I was looking for.
What is your number one question that was not answered? If you had like one question, like one big question, like you say it, repeat it over and over and just don't get that
well,
answer.
Here's what I asked my teachers. How am I going to sell this? I have these, Olympic level athletes that want to perform, want to improve their performance. How can I sell this to them in a convincing way that I don't want to lie to them? You can make up all kinds of stories.
Yeah.
But I want to have a genuine approach that is going to improve their outcomes somehow. And I just couldn't see it via Swedish massage. And so this is my conundrum. And I remember I was searching. I was actually at the school's bookstore looking at the various books. I'm always reading through literature, searching here and there. And someone put in front of me this book called Anatomy Trains. Right? Picked it up. Interesting. I read the preface. And I said, wow, this is well articulated. I could get my head around this. So I bought the book. I read the whole book over the weekend. It's a little bit repetitious and quite long-winded. But I said, this is it. This is what I need. So I looked up. I said, who is this structural integration guy? It's Tom Myers. Where is he? He was in Maine in a place called Walpole. I looked it up, about 6.5 hours. Well, that's kind of doable.
Yeah.
So, next step was find $30,000 to invest.
Yeah.
And, call him up and interview with him.
That's the structural integration course that you
Yeah, well, he's a disciple of Ida Rolf, who was the initiator of structural integration. That was her protocol. And she had disciples that went on to have their own variations like Soma, Hellerwerk, Core, the two Rolfing variations, and anatomy trained structural integration, which when I did it was called KMI, which was kinesis myofascial integration, which evolved into anatomy trained structural integration.
So why would someone go study with Tom Myers the Anatomy Trains course and not go to Ida Rolf? Is it like less technical, like more theory?
Well,
or?
first of all, Ida Rolf is no more.
Yeah.
She doesn't exist. But when I was fairly methodical, when I was looking at what are the variations, and I've checked out Hellerwork and I checked out core and I did some sessions with these disciples of these different disciplines. Mm-hmm. But it looked like Tom Myers was the most avant-garde. He was in the research. Mm-hmm. He was the guy that established the International Association of Structural Integrators. Mm-hmm. He was the guy who coordinated with Robert Schleip the first international fascia congress in Boston in 2007, mm-hmm. which really got the ball rolling in the fascia world and mm-hmm. put it back on the map.
Yeah.
So since he seemed to be the guy that was most connected, he was not only an anatomist, he was a major in English. Mm-hmm. So he had the vocabulary to articulate these ideas, mm-hmm. which, as he said, he was tired of doing things because Ida said so. Mm-hmm. So yeah. he wanted to figure out what exactly was happening in the body. They knew it worked, yeah. but why? And so this is what his Anatomy Trains model was developed for.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's kind of my feeling of it. Ida had kind of the framework. Understand that she brought it into reality, and Tom Myers kind of dig a little bit deeper into the technicalities and the whys and the. I mean, whenever you look for more like resources, you find more Tom Myers researchers.
She was the pioneer. Yeah. So she was the genius, and she had an incredible eye. Yeah. And like she could look at you and see right away there's a limitation, right. In this left shoulder. Yeah. And she could pinpoint it, and she could create a change.
Exactly.
But she realized that other people didn't have the visual capacity or capability to see what was going on. Yeah. So this system she put together, this series, was basically a formulaic methodology or protocol that anyone can use, and if you follow the steps A through Z, you're going to get a result. Mm-hmm. And as you do it, you start to develop the finesse for seeing what's going on. But this is a way that she was able to convey and teach people. Yeah. So that was very powerful. And Tom was one of her students. Then he taught anatomy for the Rolfing system. Okay. And he ultimately went on to develop his own methods. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he added another layer on top, which made it more accessible, made it more popular worldwide. Yeah. Because pretty much everyone, especially in the yoga industry, knows who Tom Myers is. Yeah. They know about his various lines, etc. Mm-hmm. So this is it's always been a great modality, and I work on people from all around the world, and every time I work on a new client, they say, well, how come I never heard of this? Mm-hmm. Well, it's not physiotherapy, it's not tied to the medical model. Mm-hmm. So, but it's very powerful.
Yeah. So why is it not popular? Like why aren't we hearing about all this fascia work? Whenever someone is injured, you want to your pinpoint, where your pain is. You go somewhere where they're gonna dig into finding where your pain is and working in the area. How come it's not popularized? Is it are we lacking the skills for that type of work?
Why is structural integration not popular?
Yeah.
Because it's an alternate form of therapy. Like it's a little bit more like acupuncture or various things like that are popular. I mean, they're ancient traditions that have been around, but it's not really part of the medical model. Mm-hmm. So the medical system, they farm out to people that, within their, like I think of physiotherapy as an appendage of the medical industry. Mm-hmm. So it's keeping them in the same loop. They're not sending clients away. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. And structural integration, it's not part of an order. It's not part of like chiropractic is now having an order, mm-hmm. physiotherapy has an order, osteopathy is starting to have an order. So it has a body that's overlooking, that's supposedly running scientific trials to demonstrate the effectiveness, start writing papers on this, mm-hmm. To bring it into the mainstream, because as far as mainstream is concerned, if you don't have randomized controls trials demonstrating its efficiency, then it doesn't really exist, even though it obviously exists and it's very powerful. So it's you have to remember that the money that you need to do these trials is basically the pharmaceutical industry that has that money. So anything that's not directly going to promote their pharmaceuticals, it's not interesting for them. So they're not going to be behind things like fasting or alternate modes of therapy or etc. Because you know there's nothing you can patent, nothing you can sell. And your question about pinpointing injuries, or what was your question?
Well, my question was, my first question you've answered, like why is it not popular, and then the fact that we're lacking research, and then we don't have that money to put into those modalities because it's not bringing money to the pharmaceutical companies. There's no drugs involved, so that is for sure one answer to that lack of popularity. And my other question was, is it maybe are we lacking the skill set to work with this type of modality? You were mentioning how Ida would look at a person and then already like feel where the imbalances are and then where we're going to be working. I feel like working with fascia takes a really certain type of attention and presence that not every therapist has. If let's say we've all been one day to maybe a spa, receive a massage, when one person goes with 10 clients a day, one after the other, you won't be able to get that attention, that presence that I feel is really required when you work with the fascia, that it's more subtle than actually pinpointing the muscle and like going muscle by muscle. So I feel it's a different type of attention. Would you say that that's one reason why it's not popular, or just we don't have that skill set of presence?
Well, there's a few issues you're covering there, and one of them you're basically describing kind of the spa model, where you'll have people are working up to 12 people in a day. Now, 12 people a day, you're dealing with a lot of, you're interfacing with a lot of different people, and like to let you know, the maximum I do in a day is 4 people, and 4 is a big load.
Right.
Because the work is slow, it's deliberate, it's quite physically demanding. Because you're working a very dense connective tissue, but it's not complicated. It's not simple, but it's work that has to be done to activate this neurological envelope that supports us and is also at the same time our interface with the environment, our neurological interface. So it's delicate in the sense that, it's everything. It's how we feel, how we relate to our environment, our proprioception, our interoception, our spatial awareness, our motor control. It's everything, but it's quite simple. It's just that it takes work. And people who want to put on a white lab coat and do high velocity thrusts and little adjustments, they're not into doing the kind of work that is demanded by structural integration. And so I've known body workers who are very good body workers, and they wanted to elevate their skills, and that's fine, to become an osteopath and eventually a doctor of osteopathy. And they completely ceased to be a good body worker. I'm not saying this is the norm, but I'm saying in this particular situation, this fellow was too preoccupied with eye tracking and other things that to me were not what I wanted, and I just couldn't hire him anymore.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and that's something I'm noticing is kind of this hierarchy that we have in our society, that anything that's manual is less valuable than the thinking, the analyzer. So we kind of, if we put a hierarchy, like at the bottom of a hierarchy in terms of body work, we have massage therapists. And then the higher you go, the more you become more analytical, and the less you touch the body. And that's something you see really often when people want to get treated, and they go somewhere. It's like a lot of like looking and turning and testing and testing and testing and scans and all those things. But at the end of the day, all the person needed was maybe just a little bit of touch and attention to the body, because here we're kind of escaping the body. We don't want to have a relationship with the body because it's less valuable. Anything that's manual is kind of a
discounted.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, actually, I look at myself as like a glorified ditch digger. I'm doing the work that you have to do to make the water flow along the ditch.
Yeah.
And it's simple, but people don't want simple. People want to pay for complicated.
Yeah.
But complicated is, I look at things as I'm always looking for the minimal effective dose. What's the least I can do, get the biggest turn on investment? And I mean, minimal as far as complication, but the work is very deliberate, very slow, and it's highly effective, but it is work. And people like to take the path of least resistance. That's why we end up in compensated states often, but also when we're working, people say, well, I can work less. That's more interesting. But I mean, I look at the fact that I'm a manual laborer, I'm a manual therapist. It keeps me healthy. It's infinitely better than sitting in front of a computer screen all day long in a flex position. So I look at that as an advantage. It also, I get to interface with interesting people and discuss other things at the same time.
Right.
But you mentioned pinpointing muscles and aiming for various pieces or where the pain is or the symptoms. That's another difference in structural integration is I'm much less concerned with your symptoms or those manifestations of disbalance where it's in your shoulder or your neck or whatever. I mean, there are factors I listen to, but in most of the case, it's a global imbalance. And that may manifest in your back, in your, different places. But I listen peripherally, but still I'm going to work the whole body as a system. And as you work the body as a system, those little nagging aches and pains start to disappear. So I see this over and over again. It's basically what happens. So I listen to people's long laundry list of complaints, and then I work systematically through the whole body. I very rarely will work just the point of complaint, because that is the least likely to yield results. So I'm balancing the whole system, and typically I ask them how they're doing, and they usually have forgotten what their main problems were because things feel normal.
Yeah. And would you say that we're broken? People are, would you say, like, let's say, like walking the street, do you have a feeling that that we're in pain, we're as humans, we're more broken than we've been in the past? Or how is it that we're more, like, I feel like we seek more and more relief for pain, and would you say that there's a bigger need today?
Well, people are increasingly using their bodies less. There's all these modern conveniences to do less, to perform what you want to perform. People are spending longer times in their cars, longer times in front of their computers, longer times on their cell phones. And this takes a toll on your body. It's just, your body responds to the demands you make of it. And it'll respond very reliably. So you have to not make the mistake and, stress your body the wrong way, because you're going to end up somewhere you don't want to end up. And I think that, traditionally people were on the farm, they are working heavier, more industrial kind of work. And now, we're trying to work less and less, move less and less. Or else we're hyper-focused on one narrow bandwidth, and so we get overuse, repetition strains, etc.
And I think there was some more prevention in the past, where you get massage treatments, you get let's say, dependent on cultures. If you go traditionally, we have traditional saunas and different things to keep us healthy in a way, and not wait until we can't walk anymore and we're such in pain that we need to go to the doctor, we need to go to the osteo, etc. Like, do you think we do more preventative things to feel better? Or,
you mean in the past?
I mean today. Are we less in the prevention than we used to be in the past?
Well, I think that, with our society being kind of the instant gratification society that it is, people are accustomed to taking the right pill, the stimulus or the put you to sleep or have sex or whatever it is, there's a pill. And this is part of that instant gratification paradigm. You know, the idea of someone fixing you, you know, as if you're broken. And this is what people, they come to you and they say, I want you to fix me. I say, I tell my clients, I'm never fixing anything. We're nourishing that fascial environment. We're predisposing you to move better. We're giving you a chance to be proactive and, you know, take a better aligned body and do something positive with it. But I don't like to think about fixing, because this is like broken or fixed, because we're never completely broken and we're never completely fixed. Everything is kind of on a continuum. And this is the same thing for diseases. You know, people talk about, well, you're a diabetic. Well, yesterday you weren't a diabetic. How could you be a diabetic today? Because that, you know, that level of glucose in your bloodstream has gone up one notch to some critical threshold, which now you're labeled as a diabetic. But I mean, you've been a diabetic for 10 years. You've been pre-diabetic, and you know, and now it's like it's written in stone. You're a diabetic, and people call themselves diabetic. Just like the guy says, I'm a frozen shoulder. You know, they identify with their infirmity. But it's a pretty bad way of looking. I like to think of that we all have cancer, we all have diabetes to some degree, and we got to think about which way along that continuum we're going to drive that with our behavior. So what does our diet involve? What does our recuperation involve? What does our stimulus like fitness and training involve? And that's all going to drive one way or the other. And if you're conscious that everything is contributing, I mean, in this whole holistic world that we live in, then you take responsibility back. You know, you're the master of your destiny. You're in charge of your body. And it's not a random thing that suddenly you are inflicted with diabetes. No, you've nurtured this unknowingly, perhaps.
That totally makes sense. We're not broken. We're not fixed. We're not fixing. I like the continuum image of we all have the potential to be diabetic, to have cancer. If we nurture whatever disease, if you give it enough attention, it will develop. And
that's exactly it.
And it's all about like having that healthy environment. But we could be any of it, and for sure the identification is something that I find could be dangerous. To say I am this, I am diabetic, I am first of all, you're kind of stuck in yourself with one thing. We put those diagnoses. I mean, diagnoses are important for treatments, in the traditional medical environment, where we have one drug per diagnosis, and then we kind of need to like put each person in one case. But it could be dangerous because that becomes your new identity, and it's kind of hard to get out of it, because now you're this drug dependent or this, and then whether it's physical or mental, identifying with depression, with bipolar, with this, with that, it just makes you reinforce whatever diagnosis was given to you, and then you accept it, and then you kind of nurture it. So.
Well, you want to understand that you just didn't get there by accident. It's not, I mean, there's something you did, some behavior you had that has driven you, that's pushed that dial in that direction. So we want to have feedback. We want to have something we can measure to see where we are and where we're going, how things are evolving or devolving, and then make a change. But everything is in flux, and a body is really, you know, it's a process. We're not a fixed entity. We're always evolving. We're in flux. So when someone finishes the session with me, they feel great. They say, oh, wow, I feel light. I have this buoyancy, and everything feels great. But how long is it going to last? And I say, well, you know, you have to think about the work I did was really nourishing your body, nourishing your physiological environment. Much the same as when you have breakfast, you're nourishing your physiological environment.
For a few hours.
But how many people say, well, you know, you finish your bacon and eggs. Do you say, how long is that going to last? No, you know that tomorrow we're going to nourish it a little bit more. It's a process that we have to be responsible for, and we have to be paying attention to continually. But there's this disconnect, like, fix me, I'm broken. So
Okay, so I have a question that I struggle with personally, and I'm having a hard time finding an answer to it. So maybe you can help me with this one. So, how would you define being healthy or health? We have all this definition of what illness is. We all know we categorize different types of diseases and illness, but what is health? That's not something that we kind. It's hard to imagine what being healthy is in a society where we're good with identifying just illnesses.
Well, there's different levels you can look at that. I mean, first of all, outwardly, how do you look, feel, and perform? You know, if you're feeling good and you're performing well and you look good, then you're not necessarily healthy, because you can be very fit and very unhealthy. But at least that's an outward sign that things are going in the right direction. Like if you're obese, if you're inflamed, if you have other problems like that, you have a pretty clear indication that something is not aligned the way it should be. But then you have to look at what is our society, what are people suffering from? And right now it's mainly insulin resistance. So insulin resistance leads to diabetes. And if you go along that same continuum, you have autoimmune problems, you have dementia, and you have cancer. This is all the same pathway, it's just moving down that continuum, mostly fueled by glucose. So that's what drives insulin resistance, and then you have fatty liver, you have all the problems that come with that. So these are things we can be aware of, and we can modify our diet, and we can get feedback by, first of all, how do we look, feel, and perform again, but then what's our blood glucose, what is our insulin? This is the biggest thing. I mean, everyone have been concerned for years about LDL cholesterol. Now finally the higher up authorities are realizing that that's not an indication of anything, and they're kind of secretly dropping it from there, just as they secretly started dropping saturated fat as a problem, and they're secretly not telling us that we can't eat eggs anymore. So now you can eat as many eggs as you want. LDL is not an issue. I mean, the only thing that's really relevant now, especially for insurance companies, is the ratio of triglycerides to HDL. And this is a very good indication of metabolic health and insulin resistance, a good proxy for insulin resistance.
Yeah.
So these are valuable things to look at. So, besides insulin sensitivity is what we want, the other key thing is to have an intact intestinal barrier. So we want to avoid having what we call leaky gut or leaky gut syndrome, which is when this selectively permeable small intestinal barrier, which determines which part of what we consume becomes part of us and which part is excreted. When this barrier becomes compromised, you get food particles, amino acids, toxins, etc., coming into the system essentially through a back door. They're being treated by your immune system as invaders or intruders. And then we have something called molecular mimicking, where your immune system mistakenly takes, your pancreas or your thyroid or some articular collagen as a intruder, and your body starts attacking itself. And then we have arthritis, or we have, thyroid dysfunction, or we have, there's hundreds of autoimmune problems. So fix your gut, become fat adapted, become insulin sensitive, and this is pretty much, if you look in the medical model, there's a million diseases, there's a million pathologies, because they want to pair each one of these with some pharmaceutical. There's more money there. But if we look at it all as one disease at different stages, then there's a lot fewer things that you can sell, and it's a lot less attractive as from a marketing point of view. But I think things are much simpler than they've been made to look. And if we get our leaky gut organized, we get our insulin sensitivity back, everything else as we become metabolically healthy, body composition, weight, skin problems, digestive problems, these are all non-issues.
Yeah, that would fix everything?
Pretty much. Name something. I mean, it doesn't fix a broken leg.
Yeah,
but you heal faster.
That's the question. Like, would it help you heal faster? Like, like talking about the fascia. Like, how is our lifestyle, nutrition helps with the fascia? Is there any correlation? Anything that's been studied in that for that matter?
Well, the fascia is an active neurological environment. It's communicating constantly with your enteric system, with your digestive system, with your brain. So you think about, there's some 250 million mechanoreceptors body-wide feeding your brain with spatial, interoceptive, proprioceptive information. Where are you in space? How are you navigating your kinesphere? So it determines how well fluids are circulating, how you're in touch with them, how is your balance, your motor control, how you move, obviously. So it's pretty much a master tissue, and as you get that in a good place, people start feeling like themselves. Like, yeah, I feel normal. I feel like I should feel.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny that when you put someone in a good place, they always feel normal.
Yeah.
And they expect to be there.
Yeah,
But they spend a long time living in a bad place and not knowing that's even accessible.
Oh yeah, that's 100%. Totally agree on that, and that's one thing that I notice a lot with clients and different people is as you're saying, knowing what being healthy is or being normal is. If you've been in a place where, I'll give you an example, in my early 20s, I didn't care much about what I was eating. So like digestive issues was something that was in my everyday life. It was just like normal for me to have, to be gassy, to be bloated, to have all those things that I didn't even know it was a word that exists, where I can just have a normal digestion and having like a good quality sleep and having all those other things.
Because that was your normal.
It was my normal, and that's what I was seeing around me. Everyone was complaining about the same thing, so it was like out of my word, until one day I started modifying what I was eating, modifying my lifestyle, different things. I was like, how did no one told me about this? The only thing that was proposed to me is get this drug. Oh, you have acid reflux. Take this. It will help you. And that's true. I will take it and it will help me. It will come back a week later and things were coming back that I didn't know even that it existed. And it's something that changed my kind of my way of seeing things, especially with my clients, having more empathy when someone comes with all those issues and you ask them like, how are you feeling? And lots of times I'm fine. Like, and then when you dig a little bit more, you realize like a lot of things are out of balance, but people can't realize that they're in pain, that they're tired, that their digestion sucks, that all those things. But sometimes you need some guidance to show. Listen, there is a better word. There's a better word out there. You just don't know it exists. And
well, also people don't have time for that.
Yeah,
they're busy. They're making do with whatever the situation is. That's it. And I see people that have basically abandoned their bodies. They say, no, I'm a cerebral person. I'm an intellectual.
Yeah.
My body is a disaster. It's broken. It irritates me. But, you know, and I say, well, the two are tied together. If you let the body go, the mind is going to follow. There's a couple of issues you touch on there. There's one is like, you know, clients are selling themselves short. They don't have big aspirations because, like you say, they've acclimatized to their normal and they accept that as what it is. And when I get someone here, I say, well, what are your objectives? And they tell me I don't want to have pain in my knee or whatever it is. But I'm looking at people and I say, well, you know, you should be aiming a bit higher. You know, think about being a world caliber athlete. You know, we want to push you in that direction. It doesn't matter if you don't get there, but if we don't aim high, we're not going to end up in a good place. So I like to treat people as, you know, you're the high performance machine that needs to be fine tuned. And when you start taking on that and being proud of, you know, your system, we finish a session with people, they feel good. Go out, walk with that. You know, this is, you want to become this new sensation. You want to own it.
Yeah.
And then it starts to change their behavior and they start to make better decisions. Because, okay, I feel great. So now, like I say, the adaptive bodywork is basically the doorway to a holistic health. in my experience, you make someone feel good about themselves, they start making better decisions.
Oh yeah.
They're going to eat better, they're going to sleep a little bit better, they feel proud, they have integrity.
Yeah.
And this is the dominoes effect. We want to get people moving positive.
Yeah.
And I think this is as far as I'm concerned, this is one of the most powerful ways to make some inroads on the way people are feeling and performing and being proud of their body.
Yeah.
And the potential you have to change it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, like small changes can make people see things differently. And as you're saying, we could just start with nutrition. I'll give another example. I have a client who had many issues and just didn't know what to start with. Like, should I start training? Should I start dieting? Should I do this? It was just like everything needs to be worked on. And she had the kind of the desire to make a change. And I told her, like, let's start just 1 month, walk every day, walk 30 minutes every day. And as little as it sounds, like just doing that 30 minutes walk every day, like, changed her whole mindset and her whole it put her in a virtuous circle. Like I'm able to discipline myself on doing one thing 30 minutes every day, and that could be a good start, just starting with something little as this, or just drinking
Keep
water.
it simple.
Yeah.
So make it manageable. Like you said, when you have 40 things you want to fix, it's overwhelming.
Yeah.
People get saturated just thinking about it. But one thing I like to do with my clients is get them to have a logbook. I have a logbook for myself. Anything I do, any fitness I do, any dietary changes, I put it in my logbook. I can always look back. What did I do? What did I change? What got better? What got worse? This includes blood glucose, ketone levels, GKI, weight, etc. Things like that I can see and monitor and see what makes changes. So that's one thing. It creates accountability.
Right.
And when you start putting things down, like this is your reality, and you become kind of proud. Each page, you put the date at the top. You put your exercise or whatever you're doing, and you have an accountability of what you've done. And this is it's a very proactive thing because it's empowering.
Right.
Getting back to the nutrition thing, like I'm 65 and a half years old right now. So
we couldn't tell.
in the 70s when I started, I was a bicycle racer. I was an endurance cyclist, and the biggest endurance metric at the time was VO2 max, endurance. So it was also the science out of Sweden at the time was all about carbohydrates and carb loading.
Right.
The more carbs you can consume and store in the form of glycogen, the more efficient you're going to be, the longer you're going to hit, the longer you're going to go before you hit the dreaded, the wall or get the bonk when you feel depleted mentally. So we used to eat pasta. I would finish cycling. I would eat a whole box of pasta with a couple of gallons of orange juice, and you feel your stomach is distended. You feel bloated, but you are invested in optimizing this period post-training where you can optimally compensate and maximize your storage of glycogen. So we did this as this is what was necessary. But I remember thinking, this just doesn't feel right. I felt bloated with a distended stomach. I couldn't sleep until it kind of subsided. But if this was the science, this is what we knew, this is what we did. At the time I was racing, I was 132 pounds, the same height I am today.
Wow.
So I had pretty much infinite endurance, but I had no power. But nothing I was doing. We were riding 550 miles a week. So it was a lot of mileage. And if a race was over 100 miles, I knew I was in there and it was going to be a good race. But I couldn't win a race. If I created a break and there was 4 other people ultimately, I would be the 4th person in the sprint. So I turned this around at some point when some of the Americans got me onto interval training. And what a massive game changer. High intensity, low duration, intervals just changes the picture dramatically. Suddenly you can close those gaps. So you can climb that hill and you can get there fast. You compromise some endurance because you put on some muscle, but you can start winning races.
Yeah, and you started winning races after that?
Well, I actually kind of quit quit cycling after I actually had a very good endurance career, and at the end of my endurance career, I was actually invited to race on a professional team in Europe. It was an American team that was going to race in Europe, and I was kind of saturated at the point, and I declined, even though that had always been my kind of ambition and goal. But it was just too long, too much. I needed a break. I took a break, and then when you're kind of a cyclist or some kind of an athlete, it starts calling you after a while. And I had this itch to go back. And this was I think I let a couple of years go by in between. I went to school, etc. And I looked up and found a trainer, and he did this battery of tests, VO2 max, Wingate. We finished the test, and he says to me, "Oh, you're a sprinter." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm an endurance athlete. This is what I've always done. This is where I've excelled." He says, "Well, you may have excelled there, but you're predisposed to be a sprinter," because I scored the highest Wingate results of any of his athletes at that point. And I said, "Well, all right. I didn't dislike that idea." So he suggested I start thinking about myself as a sprinter, and I invested in a track bike, and we had a track in Bromont, and I started to ride track events. As a matter of fact, the first day I showed up at the track, they were running a trials for the Canadian Championships, which was going to be held in Calgary that year, and they allowed me to participate, even though I had no idea that was there. And one of the qualifying events for a sprint is called the Flying 200. It's where we do 3 laps, and the last lap we dive down from the track down to the black line and do 200 meters as fast as we can in that time window. And doing that with almost no idea how to do it, I had the fastest time. And so he said, "Oh, you're a sprinter." And I said, "Okay, I'll do that." And subsequently, sprinting was very easy for me. I mean, I trained to be a sprinter. I had a good trainer who helped me go farther in that direction. And I was very successful. I have like about 12 national titles in various sprint events. And it was a place that it was very satisfying to go there. And relative to the endurance work we were doing, those long 5-hour rides in the lonely, often nasty weather, sprinting is a picnic. You go like mad for short periods of time. You relax on the rollers, but it's usually a sunny day, and it's a much prettier picture. And this fits perfectly with the minimal effective dose. High intensity, short duration, you get the benefits, and you don't wear yourself out with hours of plodding.
Yeah. Would you say that your bodywork modality follows this idea of go straight to the point?
Well, I think physiotherapists think they're going straight to the point. When they say it's a shoulder problem, let's drill down the shoulder and dig out that problem. Whereas I say, well, the shoulder is a problem, but maybe it's coming from the hip, maybe it's coming from the knee, maybe it's coming from something contralateral on your opposite ankle. Let's balance the whole system, and that's more likely to go away. So I think I developed a work ethic from being an athlete, because I think few people are willing to work as hard as I work. But I enjoy it. I enjoy the interface with different personalities. Every session you're exchanging stories and we're working together. But ask me another question. I'm not sure.
Yeah, well, I think it answers the question where your work ethic, doing like different, either like endurance or sprint, has been giving you that work ethic that we don't find everywhere. And I think a lot of athletes develop that kind of work ethic of perseverance and actually trying to solve problems compared to staying on the superficial and just repeating whatever process with every client. And having worked with you, I can say that you dig and try, and you never take anything for granted in terms of that's easy. I can go there, but you're curious, and I think being an athlete keeps you humble in that sense of there's always going to be someone who's faster than me, stronger than me. So you always want to stay on that edge of curiosity and trying to find a solution. Does that make sense?
The other thing is you can't be arrogant in your confidence. I mean, it's that the body is such a complicated system. You never know, and there's not two people that are exactly the same as far as, I mean, everything that they've experienced in their life is recorded, is written into their tissue, into their fascia, and they're going to be compensated to some degree because of that. Those stresses that happen maybe when they were younger. So it's always it's a bit of detective work. I mean, I always find we get great results, but you never know what, it's always going to be a bit different on every person, but it involves a lot of work. It involves a lot of feedback.
Right.
And I think the most important thing with the work I do is I'm not fixing you. I'm a facilitator. We're working together, but you have infinitely better information about your body than I do. Exactly. I can surmise certain things, but you have direct connection with your nervous system. You know what's going on. Right. So together, I can coach you, I can suggest things, and you tell me, how is that feeling? Let's try going into that. Is that problematic? And to the degree that it is, you can venture further or pull back. But if I give you the possibility of controlling it, you're likely to go a bit farther and get resolution easier. Right. As opposed to me trying to fix something with my knowledge. So active participation, giving the client the responsibility because it's their body, and understanding that often we want to get out of the way. Like your body has an incredible capacity to self-regulate, which is often derailed because of poor dietary choices or repetitious movement behaviors. And if we understand that the body is amazing, so we nourish it in a way that it can find its balance and find its line. This is where we're going to get results. Yeah. And so this is why it might not happen instantly, it might be a process, but we nourish you from A to Z, and it's, there's the feedback you're getting, and we adjust our trajectory until we find where we want to be. But it's always a back and forth. Yeah. It's investigating, well, what's not working? Yeah. How can we adjust that? What are we going to modify? Is it your shift work that's problematic? Is it your diet that's problematic? Yeah. Is it your shoes that are problematic? Yeah. There's so many factors that feed into it. And, remember, your body responds to what you're doing for the longest period of time. So if you're sitting for 12 hours in a collapsed flex position as an accountant, and then you go to the gym for 45 minutes to, try and untangle this. I mean, I understand with the best of intentions, you can't undo 12 hours of dysfunctional behavior with a 45-minute session of ballistic work in a CrossFit gym. Yeah. So you're going to have to go back and figure out, how can I modify my environment? And this is a crucial thing for whether it's a dietary change or a behavior change or a fitness or training change. You got to look at your environment, see how that's acting on you, and understand that unless you can reconfigure that in a way that's going to be conducive to the results you want, it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. Because willpower is never enough. You can't think yourself thin. You can't say, well, I know these foods is not good for me, so I'm going to look at them, but I'm not going to eat them. And I'm going to be strong. And this is willpower. This is good in the short term. Yeah. But willpower is it's a bit like a muscle. It can resist temptation a few times, but at a certain point it's going to tire out and you're going to give in. So especially with diet, you have to understand it's a hormonal environment that we have to understand. That food is information, and how does this food, how does it affect that hormonal environment that drives our behaviors? How are these macronutrients, whether it's fat, carbohydrates, or protein, they're all going to modify that insulin response. So when you think ketones or fat is very ketogenic, so zero effect for insulin response. Whereas carbohydrates are highly insulinogenic, meaning there's a big response from insulin. And protein is about 50-50, so it's not you still got to be careful, but we always need protein because you build structure, you build tissue with that. So just understanding how these things, the interplay of these macronutrients, you can start making more informed decisions about how you nourish your body. And this applies for every domain in this holistic environment.
Yeah, yeah. And you were saying how in order to see a change, I find there's something that comes back every time is being minimal, is removing the things that are kind of slowing you down in your process. So whether it comes to what you're eating, whether it comes to your movement, whether it comes to working with clients, you're not actively fixing them, but you're just maybe removing things that are slowing them down. And I find that's like something important, is like coming back to the source, coming back to something more natural, more minimal, and that allows us to know who we are from the outside, because we have a lot of things, parasites, we have a lot of things around us that don't allow us to function normally, and kind of removing those layers allow us to know where we are, to feel, have a connection with our bodies, and that can apply to many things, being on the phone all the time, working, music, listening to things. There's just so many things that affect our psyche and our body, and that just doesn't allow us to know what's in there.
When you look at the body, you say, well, you want to take away negative before you add a positive. So, you go to the CrossFit gym and you see these people trying to do these overhead thrusters and snatches and various things, but they don't have the shoulder mobility, they don't have the dorsiflexion, and they can accomplish these things to some degree, but at what cost? And so ultimately they're going to become dissatisfied because they're not reaching their goals, or they're going to get injured and they'll have to stop. But you want to get back to the base. I mean, the base of the movement pyramid is mobility. So if you're lacking the requisite mobility to perform whatever task it is you want to perform, then it's only going to get done with compensation, which is going to have these consequences of injury or inferior performance.
Right.
So if we can identify these things and draw someone's attention to it, and often this means if you're an Olympic lifter and you're not getting good alignment, we're going to regress you backwards, give you the necessary mobility so you can start getting that proper alignment.
That's it.
And then you'll go back to those weights which were previously crushing you, and now they feel easy. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
it.
definitely something.
So John, you're a therapist and you're also a teacher. You developed those courses that you teach, I think, here at the studio and other places. Can you tell us about how you came to this place of teaching, sharing your knowledge, and what does it look like? What are those courses that you're giving?
Okay, well, start out with structural integration. It's traditionally taught in a series. If it's Rolfing, it's a series of 10 sessions, or if it's at anatomy trained structural integration, it's taught in a series of 12 sessions, and there's some other ones that are in between. And well, why so many sessions? Well, the idea is that, in one session, how deep can we go? How far can we go? And how is this going to stick with one interval of therapy? Now, the idea, if you have a succession of therapies, we can make a change, build on that change, etc. But also, if we know that we have in front of us, if we have a client who subscribes or signs up for a series, now the work can be completely different. We can divide it into a first series of 4 sessions where we're going to work superficially. We're going to work the extrinsic musculature. We're going to open up the outer sleeve, so to speak.
Right.
We're going to get things moving. And then we have the carapace, the outer shield is kind of, the outer armor is brought down. Now we can dive deeper into the stabilizing muscles and the internal structures like the psoas and the iliacus, the pectineus, these, things that you don't get to superficially and you don't want to go right away.
Right.
But we've conditioned the body so now we can go deeper and work the deeper structural stabilizing tissues that can be dictating how you hold yourself. And when we've got that done, now we can go another 4 sessions and we can kind of crystallize the whole thing together, integrating the work that we've done in the 3 portions. So it's now a homogeneous, harmonious symphony of movement. So that's 12 sessions, which if it was done every week, that's still 3 months. And the problem with that is it's a big commitment, both financially and time-wise for a lot of people. So what I wanted to do is using the strategies and the techniques of structural integration was synthesize this into something that can be delivered in a 90-minute session that covers the whole body, that works the whole body. And it's a pretty rigorous choreography of work that is challenging to me, and it's transformative to the client. So I kind of synthesized all the work and the stuff that I've taken in from my various teachers into a protocol that can be administered, that can be taught in a 16-hour period over a weekend, that you'll have all the tools to do all these changes. And with this one protocol, you can bias it, to accommodate particular presentations of your client, but it's a pretty complete protocol. So every time you finish a session, the person feels whole. They feel like themselves. They feel connected. They feel neurologically ready. And one of the problems with a 12 series is there's a little bit of disintegration before integration, because you deconstruct to reconstruct. And so the person they have to commit because they're partially deconstructed for a period of the time. And you don't want that time to get too long, because they start adapting to that deconstructed mode of existence. So you have to have someone who's really committed to do a 12 series. But when I'm doing the adaptive bodywork protocol on the table, I'm going to make some modifications in a very complete, full body way, so that every time they leave my studio, they feel intact, they feel whole, and they feel like they're not leaving partially completed. And so this is the beauty of it. But within that protocol, we can progressively address certain issues, whatever they have, but in every scenario, they still are not being disassembled, which is a certain advantage. When someone is teaching a big course like this, they teach a lot of things that are peripheral to the actual work. And it's all good stuff. You want to know about embryology, you want to know about, there's so many things they're all wonderful, but I wanted to get right down what is the hands-on practical stuff that's going to make the change. I'm going to condense all this stuff down into this weekend course and give people these tools, and then it's just through repetition and practicing it, you get better and better, but you have the whole package. And I think that a lot of people, to sell their protocol, they embellish it a little bit, they fluff it up, and they put extra stuff in to make it more of a master course. And that's nice if you have the time and the money to invest in that. But I think it's kind of nice to get all the tools quickly, know the whole protocol, and then just work on it till it becomes yours. And this is what you can do with the table work. And similarly, the floor work, which I consider it's very compatible, and it's the same system but on the floor, the same principles. But what's interesting is that if you put someone on the table, necessarily it's going to be rather a passive. They're receiving passively because they're lying down. When you put them on a mat on the floor, now it's an interaction like two athletes. So we're like CrossFit, team members, for example, and we have maybe it's overhead flexion. We're not getting a good overhead in the snatch or something. It's a limitation of shoulder mobility. So I can get you on the floor, and I'm going to coach you how to navigate through that, and I'm going to be using the weight of my foot, for example. I put my weight gently into some part of your body, and with your feedback, we find the level that's appropriate, that feels good, that feels like something's happening, but it's not too much. And then I get you to move through that area. And as you move, we lubricate the joint, we create differentiation in that tissue, and we restore mobility. And the thing is that because you've driven it actively, you get up, you own that movement behavior right away. So, I feel great and I'm ready to do something. as when something is done to you passively, even though you may have made the change, there's a bit of a disconnect, and you have to walk around and try and get a feeling of reestablishing that sense about your body, which is not immediate because something was done to you rather than you doing it yourself, active versus passive. And the beauty is that when I'm using my leg or my foot, it's a very powerful protocol. It's as far as the therapist is concerned, there's no wear and tear on the therapist. You become a pilot. So you're navigating, you're instructing, and you're just moving you're shifting your hip and thus your weight. So there's no wear and tear on you, and you can engage with the client. You have eye contact, you're communicating, so you're working together to resolve the client's problem. But the client has now been put in charge of proactively going after the problem that he has. So we work together until that mobility is restored, until he feels good and he gets up, and it's often miraculous. Like what I do at the beginning of workshops typically is I'll say, well, who's got a problem? A knee problem, a shoulder problem, a back problem. And there's always someone says, oh yeah, I had a guy in Toronto, he says, yeah, my arm, it only moves like this, it's fucked, it's broken. And I said, well, what happened? I said, well, he was a field hockey player in the Beijing Olympics, and he just, through overuse and whatever, he couldn't get anything better than that. And I said, well, what have you tried? And he mentioned some protocols, which I won't mention, but he says they're okay, but it takes 30 sessions. I said, well, to me that sounds like a demonstration that it's not that effective. So I said, well, I'll use you as my guinea pig. So this was in a modality gym in Toronto. There's about 50 people there. It was a pretty big workshop. Put him on the floor, and we brought him through a range of motion and movements. And I think it was under 5 minutes. He had his hand, he said, I'm going to come to all your workshops. And it was that, you look at the look in this guy's eyes, who just restored movement that he thought was gone forever, and it was easy.
What was different?
It was different is that I had him driving the change himself. I was putting the weight and the pressure where he needed to, and I was instructing him how to move, but he was driving it neurologically, so he was owning that movement. And it's the thing is that good things are all usually simple. And complicated things are just complicated. But these techniques are highly effective. They're simple. They're often what we call sensory rich, meaning you have to challenge your tissue. You have to go into that pain threshold a little bit to make a change. You don't want to go into it massively because you're going to have a kickback in the other direction. But you have to just tickle it a little bit. You have to go into it a little bit to challenge it, to change it. And when you're driving the behavior yourself, you're in control. You're not worried. Like if you're putting your finger in the fire, you can do that knowing that you can pull out.
Right.
But if someone else is doing it, you're scared. You start blocking up, and you're not going to get anything. So it's going to be counterproductive.
Right.
So it changes everything when you're in charge. You're the person in charge. You're going to drive the behavior. I'm telling you what to do, how to move, and you're going to see that through each repetition, you're going to get a little bit more amplitude, a little bit more range of motion, and we finish it. For one application, it's a couple of minutes, and you've changed the quality of that joint.
Yeah, amazing. So we're co-organizing your upcoming course in September at XFIT Gym. What would be who can take this course? Is it for who would be a perfect person for this type of learning?
Well, I like to say, jokingly, anyone who's got a body.
Right.
But yeah, not everyone with a body is ready to commit to something. But anyone who's got a body who wants to take it to another level, who's not satisfied with where they are and they want to challenge it and get more out of their body. It takes a certain desire to improve something to invest in a new protocol. So you have to be interested in, maybe changing your mobility, maybe getting out of pain, maybe sleeping better. There's a lot of things that can be done, but what I specifically don't ask for is there's no prerequisites. Like I find that people who come to this course with a priori knowledge, like they're already an osteopath or they're already something, physiotherapist, that's not bad, but sometimes it's baggage that they have trouble divesting themselves of to learn something new. So someone who has no idea, it's totally fresh, this is great. So we start them from the beginning, we introduce them to it, and they don't, it doesn't matter what the tissue is called. I say, where on your body do you have something that doesn't move the way you want to? Can you point to it? Wherever it is, right there, that's fine.
Right.
Maybe that's like kind of the elbow, but we don't care what muscular tissue it is. It's completely irrelevant. So as long as you know where it is, and as long as you know how to move that area, we can apply some force and get you to gravitate through that range of motion and restore that tissues. And that's as simple as it is. It doesn't matter that's the popliteal, space, or that it's the subclavius muscle. Topographically, it's useful for location, but other than that, it's totally irrelevant.
Yeah, I love it. Just minimal.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
And you just got to move. You got to be able to identify where things are not moving.
Yeah.
So then we apply pressure to that area, and then it's essentially we're polishing. Like if you have a joint and you compromise it by putting weight or putting tension on it, and then we get you to move through that range of motion, we're essentially polishing, we're lubricating, we're embellishing the synovial fluid, we're taking away little adhesions, and then we take the pressure off, suddenly you have this flow and this smoothness and this, luscious movement happening.
Yeah, really amazing. Well, John, thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to your course in September. I'll be assisting. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people watching here that are curious to know about what John is doing. You can shoot me a message, or I'll put John's info as well. If you can ask him directly. But it was
one thing about these workshops is it's if you're going to workshops, you say, well, I'm not sure, I don't really know this stuff. But the thing is, when you start working interactively with other people, all the artificial barriers are down. Everyone is even. Like we're all wearing our white, yoga kimono. Everyone is zeroed out, and we're there to solve our problems. So you work together. It's incredible for building team spirit. Everyone is proactively getting some result. You're getting result, giving the work. You're feeling the result as you're receiving it. So not only is it a possibility to learn this protocol to help people, but you can take yourself through a complete transformation. And 16 hours is a lot of time to be receiving body work. So if you have some problem, you can understand why is it there, how can you get rid of it, and it's just a really nice experience.
Yeah, really amazing. Thank you so much, John.
My pleasure. I look forward to it.